So we have yet another edition of Confused Americans in Europe, otherwise known as American living vicariously through other Americans as they travel through Europe. So without further ado, let's get into this first video. Being American in Europe is humbling.
Being American in Europe is humbling because I'm at the Prada Foundation in Milan, and these are the restrooms, but I go in, where's the toilet? It's just a mirror. There's a sink in every single stall. There's sinks out here.
Wait, first of all, this is one of the most interesting restrooms I've ever seen in my life. And I guess it makes sense because she said she's at the Prada Museum or something like that, which just sounds fancy, but this is actually...
Mirror. There's a sink.
That's actually crazy. That's a crazy restroom, and rest assured that of the restrooms I've been to throughout Europe, I have never seen a restroom that looked anything like this. The restrooms that I've been to were just restrooms. Oftentimes, I would say they were nicer than your average American restroom in that you didn't really have those stall gaps. These restrooms seem like you have your own room, a literal room, not even a stall. But this is very, very interesting. Is this just a thing where she's at, or are there more restrooms in Europe like this?
In every single stall, there's sinks out here. I have to pee. I feel so dumb.
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I drink a lot of water. You'll probably see me take multiple sips of water throughout this video. So I pee a lot. I probably pee once or twice an hour. And I can imagine being in a situation where you're in the restroom and you really have to pee and you don't know where the toilet is. But from what I could tell, and I could be wrong here, but let's go ahead and go back. It looks like this might be a door handle, right? So the likelihood is that the toilet is actually in its own separate room and this is a door handle, but I could be completely wrong. But even the framing right here looks like a door. So I guess when you have to pee, you're not really thinking straight. You're just thinking in the simplest terms possible. But this right here, I'm not going to lie. Again, this is the most interesting restroom I've ever seen. I like stuff like this, but maybe not when I have to pee. But again, the restrooms that I've been to in Europe looked absolutely nothing like this one. I've been to restrooms in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Switzerland, I believe, and London, and Spain as well. And I've never seen a restroom like this. But again, the restrooms in Europe, in my experience, are nicer than the restrooms in the US. And that makes sense because oftentimes you have to pay for them. On to the next video. 3 culture shocks on my road trip in Poland.
3 culture shocks on my road trip as an American living in Poland. Number 1, rest stops. Polish rest stops blew my mind. They are very clean, modern, and super organized. They are very well taken care of. In the US, there is trash everywhere. They are very dirty, and if you get real...
Okay, so is this what the Polish rest stops look like? No, this is nice. This is very nice. Now, for reference, I am very, very familiarized with American rest stops because I spent 3 months living in my car back in, what was it? I think 2023-ish? Late 2022, early 2023, something like that. 3 months living in my car, and then recently, earlier this year when my girlfriend and I visited the US, we spent around 3.5 weeks doing van life. So we were at rest stops almost every single day. And let me tell you, rest stops are some of the grimiest, sketchiest places that you can go to in the US. There were times where I was literally scheduled to stop at a particular rest stop for the night, and I would just keep driving because I was like, this is sketchy. I don't want to be here at nighttime. Of course, that's kind of a whole different issue with safety standards in general, but this right here is a very good sign when you have these spaces looking like this.
Lucky, you might find someone sleeping on the toilet. People here in Poland really take care of their things. Number 2, 2 McDonald's next to each other. I honestly couldn't believe this one. Why do they build 2 McDonald's right next to each other? And it's not only with McDonald's, it's like with Burger King and KFC. They're like always right next to each other. Why not put a McDonald's and a KFC on the other side?
Okay, that's something that I don't recall seeing in Europe. And this just goes to show you that not every European country is the same. I don't think I ever saw a McDonald's on both sides of the highway like that before. Let me know if that's a normal thing where you're from, because in the Netherlands, at least, I don't think I ever saw that. Look at how nice this highway is, by the way. If you're European, you're like, what do you mean? It's just a regular highway. If you're from the US, you know what I mean. Look at how clear the lines in the road are. Doesn't seem like there's excessive road construction or anything like that. Not a lot of traffic. Just nice infrastructure overall. But having the McDonald's on either side, I guess logically, the best explanation that I could think of is that you have a McDonald's for each side of the road. But generally, the way they'll do it in the US is you'll have an exit that will take you off the highway, and both exits lead to a road that runs perpendicular to the highway. And you use that perpendicular road to then get to the McDonald's or the rest stop, so on and so forth. But to be fair, in the US, oftentimes you will see a rest stop on either side of the highway. So I guess this is kind of like a rest stop in a sense. I could be wrong about that, but that's kind of the closest comparison I could think of.
And to top it off, there's like no connecting road between these two parking lots. There's only a sidewalk. Does anyone know why this is a thing?
Okay, so yeah, so that pretty much answers it right there. So again, that perpendicular road doesn't exist. So you're taking an exit, but you're not exiting off the highway technically. You're kind of just going on a little side part of the highway like you would at a rest stop in the US. So definitely very fascinating. I would not have expected that. I would not have expected that at all.
I'd love an explanation. And finally, number 3, gas stations. They are super small compared to the US, but the real shocker was seeing someone plug this hose into the bottom of their car to fill up. I couldn't really find out what it was, so if someone can also explain this one, I'd really appreciate it.
Wait.
Well, if someone can also...
He said they were plugging that into the bottom of their car? I don't think I've ever seen that before. I would definitely love to know more about what that is for. But as far as the size of the gas stations, to his point, I think coming from Texas specifically, I don't really know where he's from, but coming from Texas, this right here is basically just a regular gas station. This is the average gas station you will find on a street corner. Whereas the gas stations that are primarily catered to people on road trips, like at, let's say, Buc-ee's, they are big. I don't know how many pumps they have at those gas stations. I'll put a picture on the screen right here. Those gas stations are huge and the rest stops are huge. And generally those rest stops tend to be pretty clean, but your average American rest stop is dirty and you will not have access to multiple McDonald's restaurants like that. And you will have many more gas pumps. But that's pretty interesting. On to the next video. Culture shocks I had as an American living in Vienna, Austria. And this video is muted because copyrighted music. It's kind of crazy. The final assignment isn't due until July 1st. What, for which class? The one we're in together? No, that project is due on January 7th. Oh no. No, it says it's due on 7/1/2022. Yeah, that's January 7th, 2022. Just imagine, oh my gosh, just imagine if she had thought that and waited until May to start doing that assignment just to find out that she was 4 or 5 months late. That's crazy. The date format is day, month, year. That's something that I've come to realize is just logical because, and I'm pretty sure the whole entire rest of the world outside of the US uses this date format. I could be wrong about that. Let me know in the comments, but this makes the most sense because you have the smallest unit of time, the second smallest unit of time, and then the largest unit of time. So it makes the most sense. Day, month, year, rather than month, day, year. Doesn't really make sense. I guess the reason why the US uses month, day, year is because the month only goes up to 12, whereas the day can go up to 31. So maybe they're going more by the number itself than the actual unit of time. I hope this is making sense, but clearly it must not make sense because the whole rest of the world decided that this was more logical. So I think this is one of those things that's fairly inconsequential for most people, but in this context, like she's showcasing, it can become very problematic. And even in another video I reacted to recently, someone was saying that they were a month early for their appointment because they forgot to change the date format. So these things do happen, I suppose. They never happened to me, but they definitely happen. What time should we meet for lunch tomorrow? I'm busy until around 13, so how about 17? What? Is 17 too early? We can meet up at 17:30 if you'd like. Do you mean 5:30? Yeah, I forgot we use a 24-hour clock here. So, okay, this is something that I still don't quite understand. Obviously, the rest of the world is using the 24-hour clock. The thing that I don't understand, because it's my understanding that you don't say, hey, let's meet up at 17 o'clock. You say, let's meet up at 5 o'clock. But maybe it's just different in Austria. Let me know what country you're from in the comments below, and let me know how you would say, let's meet up at 5 o'clock p.m. Because, I mean, coming from the US, that's how I would say it. Hey, let's meet up at 5 o'clock p.m. Or really, I don't even have to say p.m. because my friends know I'm not a morning person. I'm not going to wake up at 5 o'clock to meet anybody on this planet. So if I say, hey, let's meet up at 5, that automatically means 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But is that just an Austria specific thing, or how does that work? AM and PM isn't a thing here. Is it cold outside? No, it's actually quite warm. It's about 13. What? Oh my God, I don't have enough clothes for that. That's not bad. It's about 55 in Fahrenheit. Europeans use Celsius to measure temperature. So this right here, out of everything she's talked about in this video, this is the thing that I struggled with the most. And the reason why is because it seems like the conversions from Celsius to Fahrenheit aren't really direct. I mean, 13 to 55, what's the equation to get you from one number to the next? That's what I struggle with the most, and I still use Fahrenheit, I'm not gonna lie. I know that the rest of the world uses Celsius, but I struggle to really grasp the conversions. Because to me, when I hear 100 degrees, I know it's hot outside. Maybe with more time and just more exposure to that, I can sort of get a grasp for myself of what hot actually is in Celsius. But this is something that I have definitely struggled with. On to the next video. Culture shock files as an American in Denmark. Do not ask people, how are you?
In Denmark, nobody asks, how are you? Unless they're genuinely concerned about you and they want a real answer. People just don't do small talk here. Like, you would never go up to a cashier and then they say, hi, how are you? You're lucky if you get that initial hi in a lot of places. Coming from the South in the United States, that was a huge adjustment for me.
So she's from the US South. If you don't know anything about the US South, basically that is where most of those social stereotypes come from. If you go to New York City, or maybe even to a certain extent LA, anywhere on the West Coast, anywhere that's not in the South or the Midwest, you will come across more people who keep to themselves, I would say. Especially in busier cities like New York and Chicago, even though Chicago's in the Midwest. Generally, the bigger the city is, the less likely it is that people will have that small talk with you. Because especially if you're at the register, you have to ring up so many more people because the population is so much higher. But in the South, people will have full-on conversations with you. In the South, if you're in line at the post office, people are going to try to talk to you. Or if they don't try to talk to you, you will see people striking up conversations. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know why that never rubbed off on me, but I am the polar opposite. This is why I really want to visit pretty much any Scandinavian country. I've heard that Danish people are the most extroverted of the Scandinavian countries. Correct me if I'm wrong on that in the comments, that's just what I've heard. But I'm an introvert. I'm a big introvert. I know I say that in almost every video, but it's true. It's true. I mean, this is the most talking I'm going to do all day, is talking to you. So I would really like to be in an environment where that's the case. And honestly, being here in Vietnam, that is the case. Granted, I think that has a lot more to do with the language barrier than anything else. But in the Netherlands, for example, what I found was that even though pretty much everyone in the Netherlands below a certain age speaks fluent English, people weren't just starting conversations like that. The only time people started conversations with me in public was when I was at the gym, in the locker room specifically. And it would always start off with some sort of compliment, and then we talk about training and things like that. Those are conversations that I'm okay with having. But when we're just talking about a whole bunch of nothing, when we're having elevator talk, how's your day going, this, that, and the third, it's like, we can just avoid this. We don't have to do this. And the thing is, in the US, especially in the South, you're kind of made to feel like a bad person for not wanting to indulge in that elevator talk. But it seems like in the Scandinavian countries, and really in most of Europe, you don't have that same degree of guilt, or you're not made to feel that same degree of guilt for not having those conversations.
It was something I had to break out of, asking people, how are you? Because to them, that was a very strange question as a stranger to ask them. So tip, if you're traveling to Denmark or Sweden, Norway, really if you're traveling anywhere in Europe, probably, do not ask random strangers, how are you? That's a kind of like an invasive question here. I live in a part of the country where small talk is more normalized. Like I've told you guys in other videos, I get stopped regularly to have conversations with older people around here, but still, nobody ever asks, how are you? And if they're asking you, it's because they are genuinely concerned about how you are and they want a real answer, not just, I'm fine.
So something else that I just remembered about the Netherlands, and I'm just talking about the Netherlands because that's where I lived for 14 months. So that's where I have the most experience in Europe. What I found was that people in the Netherlands, although they're very unlikely to strike up random conversations with you, even in the small towns where I was at, they will greet you. And that's something that I wasn't really prepared for because, again, I'm an introvert. So I wasn't expecting people to say, fijne avond, or eet smakelijk, or things like that. If you're Dutch, you know what those things mean. But I wasn't really anticipating those greetings because I almost feel like, oddly enough, in the Netherlands, people are more likely to greet you than they are in the US, at least in my experience, but they're less likely to converse with you. They understand that saying fijne avond doesn't necessarily mean that you have to initiate a full-on conversation. It can just be a greeting in passing, and you can just leave it at that.